Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. To introduce Professor Ephraim Isaac, I choose to not follow the conventional practice of mentioning a litany of books authored, major articles written, or by any academic qualification or belongingness to major institutions around the globe. I believe Professor Ephraim transcends all these qualifications. Instead, I choose a different way to point out the intrinsic spiritual and cultural values and principles that he used and used that made a difference in the qualitative transformation of the human condition to a peaceful and loving state around the globe. Mention of Professor Ephraim's merits and superb contributions to the peaceful conclusions of peace talks between factions, mitigating potential explosive situations by applying traditional and spiritual methods that speak to the hearts of conflicting groups is one way. As King David came to be known as the heart of God in antiquity, so is Professor Ephraim Isaac, the heart of God of modern times. Recounting the many accolades and praises, as well as awards he has received from different major institutions, partly describes who the true Ephraim Isaac is. Let me pick a few of these testaments. A person who diligently works for bettering the relationships between Jews and African Americans from Haaretz. A mobile library of languages, the Ethiopian Herald, mark that he speaks 17 languages. Ethiopian Renaissance man, biblical scholar, philosopher and musician, Lifestyles magazine. A scholar who exhorts youths to honor traditional values. One wise man, the Princeton Packet. Peace activist, a unique Ethiopian who is truly a man of all seasons, Ethiopian Review. He personifies the synthesis of two ancient cultures combined with modern conceptions, the Jerusalem Post. Sought after nationally and internationally, he is widely acclaimed as a public lecturer on religion, literature, ancient history, peace and conflict resolution. He is simply an ambassador of love, par excellence. But for our purpose today, he speaks about the Ethiopic Book of Enoch, once again, to enlighten us with his wisdom. Before I call upon the professor to the forum, please know that there will be a question and answer period at the conclusion of his presentation. You are welcome to view the display of few selected rare materials from the collection. I now want to conclude the introduction by posing a question to Professor Ephraim Isaac as to why the Book of Enoch, while it merited inclusion in the scriptures of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church, other denominations of faith have excluded the book as apocryphal. Please welcome Professor Ephraim Isaac.
Good evening. It's a very great pleasure for me to see all of you. And you just heard about somebody he introduced. Is he here? The person you introduced. he's loaded me with acclamations that I really cannot carry while I'm talking. But in any case, I will answer your question at the end. I thank you very, very much for this kind invitation to speak at this truly distinguished library about the Book of Enoch. I thank especially my good friends, Mr. Fantaun, and then maybe I'll take some time to introduce him too, but it takes time, and Ms. Mirza Sana and Mr. Yoram? Yes. Mr. Yoram, for making the arrangement for me to be with you tonight to speak about the Book of Enoch, a book that many years ago I translated. It's in the Doubleday Press edition, and which is now a world-renowned book. Let me say, the three Abrahamic religions, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, are deeply rooted in the Hebrew Bible. Yet, if any other work outside the Bible that you know has been equally fundamental for our understanding of the rise and development of early Christianity, early Judaism, and even Second Temple Judaism, it is the book that we call the Book of Enoch. This is a statement that all biblical international scholars would agree to. Yet, the book has been lost to all these religions, and I am proud to state that the complete version of the Book of Enoch was discovered in no other place but in my beautiful country of Ethiopia, solely preserved in ancient Ethiopian language, which I often refer to as classical Ge'ez language. Numerous fundamental beliefs found in Judaism, Christianity, and Muslim, such as the concept of the resurrection of the dead, the final judgment, the nature of angels, and many expressions, or especially the expression called the Son of Man, which you find in the Gospels, are found first in no place but in the Book of Enoch. Despite this very critical importance of the Book of Enoch, lost to the rest of the world, why didn't the world know it until about a couple hundred years ago? The Book of Enoch was translated into Greek and Latin, some of it in Aramaic, but they were all lost. It survived in complete version only in classical Ethiopic. I recently heard a professor at Oxford saying, Africa alone has not contributed to civilization. He needs to go to elementary school. The Book of Enoch, which is preserved in Ethiopia today, is considered central in our understanding of the rise of Christianity, Judaism, and even early Islam. It was known in the early church. It was quoted by great church fathers like Cyprian, even Tertullian especially considered it a holy book. Somehow or other later church fathers lost it. Jerome particularly didn't know much about this particular book, but it got lost to the rest of the world. But it was known it existed. It was also quoted in one place in the New Testament, in the book of Jude. So the West knew about this book. In fact, they were looking for it since the 16th century. I remember in the 16th century, Somebody brought a book to Ethiopia and said, this is the Book of Enoch. It happens to be a book written actually by Ethiopians called The Mystery of Heaven and Earth. It's not the Book of Enoch. So in 1773, a Scottish traveler in Ethiopia was shown this book. He was excited, and he brought 3 copies of this book to the West. In this discussion, I will explore what is the Book of Enoch. What does it contain? What is the wide range of scholarly interest and research and debate surrounding it? And what is the importance of this book to the Ethiopian Orthodox Church? And how it has come now to be also important in biblical scholarship, the whole world. According to the book of Genesis, Enoch, the son of Jared, Adam said in Canon, and Methuselah, and then Noah. According to the book of Genesis, Enoch was the son of Jared and the father of Methuselah, the 7th descendant of Adam. He lived 365 years, and it says in the Genesis, he walked with the Almighty God and was taken. That has been interpreted as meaning he did not die or experience natural death. The Ethiopic Book of Enoch is an extraordinary work of religion. It portrays Enoch as a man whose eyes were opened by the Almighty and allowed to travel through the heavens. In his dream visions, he saw heaven and hell, the fallen angels, and the Son of Man. I'll say something more about that. Enoch also describes a calendar and the history of ancient Israel. It has one of the first books to have the list of angels, like Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and then the fallen angels. I'll be talking about them. Also, one of the first person to specifically discuss the last judgment, the appearance of the Son of Man, and the coming of the end of the world. It says, I quote it from my translation, his eyes were opened by God. He saw the vision of the Holy One in the heavens, which the angels showed me. And from them I heard everything. I understood everything. Not for this generation, but for the generation in the distant to come. Now to move forward, what is the Book of Enoch? The Book of Enoch is a very important composite book that has 5 major parts. Some scholars believe that these 5 major parts were composed at different times. Originally independent, separate works, later redacted into one separate work. These 5 books, or 5 parts of the Book of Enoch, are called the Book of the Watchers, or the Fallen Angels, the Book of the Parable, the Coming of the Son of Man, the Astronomical Book, one of the first discussion of calendar, the Dream Visions, and something called the Epistle of Enoch. Now first, the first part of Enoch is called the Book of Watchers. What are watchers? It's about the so-called fallen angels. In Hebrew, they're called Nephilim. In some places called B'nai Elohim in Genesis. These angels made a covenant to descend upon the earth. They were about 300 tall, else that it says, almost like 400 feet tall. Have you ever seen a person 400 feet tall? Well, their leader was somebody called Shemiazza or Semiazza. And he orders the fallen angels that have come down to commit adultery, marry earthly women, and these earthly women become pregnant and give birth to giants. And these giants corrupt humanity. They consume everything. They commit sin against the birds, the reptiles, the fish, and other animals. They drink their blood. They fornicate and corrupt humanity. On account of this sin, God sent the deluge, or that destroyed the world in the time of Noah. The leader of these fallen angels was called Azazel in past place. And he teaches people also how to make weapons of war and destruction, like swords, knives, shields, breastplates, weapons of war, and so on. Ironically, some of them also taught other beautiful instruments like making bracelets, eyelids, and almost like goldsmith work. It is from Enoch. We all know about the angels like Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and so on, but it is from the book of Enoch that we first know the specific names of these angels and their role, plus the names of the fallen angels. There are quite many of them. I'll read very fast a few of them. Arakel, Ramiel, Kokabiel, Tamiel, Azazel, Daniel, Hazakiel, Bazalel, Armauros, Turiel, Ananiel, Zakiel, Shamsiel, so on. There are quite a few. It doesn't matter if you didn't hear what I said. The book of the Watchers also refers to the descent of the Almighty God on Mount Sinai with a host of angels. It talks about human corruption and the giving of the commandments, and talks about the condemnation of the sinners and the life of the saints. Enoch himself tries to intercede on behalf of the fallen angels. Let me retract back and say, there is a reference, I think maybe I already said it, to angels that came down in the book of Genesis. But it doesn't detail them. The detail is found only in this particular book. What did they do when they came into the earth? In any case, we found in this work not only the names of these angels, but their duties and the good and evil that is being committed in the world by angels. The story describes Sheol, the place where the fallen angels go, the tree of life, which we know about from other places, and the coming of the Almighty to the Mount Sinai to give the law. The good angels, Michael, Gabriel, Raphael, and Uriel, come to redeem humanity from this destruction by the evil angels. So God sent Uriel to inform Noah of the coming of the deluge and instruct him what to do. Raphael imprisons Azazel, the leaders of the fallen angels, casts him into darkness. Gabriel takes the other angels also imprisoned them. Now, this is, in brief, standing on one foot, the summary of what this first part is, the book of the angels. There's many more details, but I cannot get into it because I'd like to tell you about what the other part of Enoch is. So now, I spoke about this first part, about the fallen angels. The second part of Enoch, chapters 37 to 71, is called by scholars the book of parables, similitudes. It is in this book that someone called the Son of Man is described. His appearance in the final judgment in the world. Now, how many of you know your New Testament well? You don't have to raise your. Have you come across a reference, the Son of Man, in the New Testament? Oh, yes, it's all over the place. Where is it from? Where does it come from? From this book. The disciples took it from this book. This Son of Man expression first appeared in Enoch, and later the disciples of Jesus and the others used it to describe Jesus or his coming and whatever. He is the eschatological Messiah, meaning the Messiah of the last of days. He's described as the righteous one, the chosen one. He sits on the throne of glory of judgment. The New Testament reference to the Son of Man unquestionably comes from the book of Enoch, and used by the writers of the gospel and the others. A few scholars have erroneously suggested, because of this particular reference to the Son of Man, that maybe this came in post-Christian period, but that idea is dismissed. Both myself in my work and Professor James Charlesworth and many other scholars, we have disabused of this idea that there's no question that this particular part of Enoch is pre-Christian, and the idea of the Son of Man was taken over by the disciples. Despite extensive debate about the book of parables and the Son of Man's identity, so many scholars, or most, agree that the expression refers to the heavenly, supernatural Messiah who sits on the throne and judges the world in the last days. In the book of parables, the Son of Man arrives in the last days to judge the world. It talks about the joy of his coming, the power of his wisdom. It also describes the final judgment of the watchers, the dwelling of the righteous. It also refers to the astronomical mysteries, to which it was later, talks about the judgment of evil kings and the powerful, the angels of punishment, and the resurrection of the dead. Again, this concept of resurrection is first emphasized in this particular book. It talks about the repentance of angels, the return of the children of Israel from dispersion. Again, I'm trying to summarize what each part says. You can ask me questions, but it's much more than what I'm telling you. So now let me move forward and tell you what the third part of the book of Enoch is. The third part consists of chapters 72 to 82, and is called by scholars the astronomical books. It's very interesting because it's one of the ancient books that describes the number of days, months, and years. The heavenly luminaries, their movements as revered by the angel Uriel to Gabriel, to Enoch. It talks about the solar calendar But this solar calendar is different from what you know. 364 days, not 365, was it? Divided into 52 weeks. And each week is divided equally into seasons of 91 days. And 3 equal months of each 30 days, with an extra 1 day after the 3 months. Each year and each season starts on Wednesday, the 4th day of creation. The astronomical book, or part of Enoch, also describes in detail the sun and its movements, the phases of the moon, its waxing and rising, and it talks about 12 winds, 4 portals of the corners of the world, the stars that lead the years, the month, and the mountains, the rivers, and the islands. My late friend, the distinguished Professor Otto Neugebauer, many of you know he is the historian of ancient science, very distinguished, was at the Institute for Advanced Study. I'm very happy to say he ended up writing a book called Ethiopic History and Astronomy and Calendar, and he used the Book of Enoch and its relationship, and I worked with him on that subject. You can find the book called Ethiopic Astronomy and Calendar, and therefore I'm again only summarizing what this part of the book is. I don't want to take more time to describe all the many details. So let me move now to the 4th part of the book. The 4th part of the book is a very interesting part. It's called the Dream Visions. It's called the Dream Visions by scholars because it describes the history of the ancient people of Israel in the form of visions he saw. From the beginning to the end of the Maccabean revolt, which means that's his time, because that's before Christianity. Scholars date this particular book to about 163, 142 BC. The visions also describe the deluge, the coming of the Messiah, the history of angels, the corruption of mankind. It also refers back to the old one. The advent of 7 angels, whose names are mentioned, and the punishment of the fallen angels, Noah's deliverance, the Exodus, the travel of the children of Israel in the desert of Sinai, the giving of the law on Mount Sinai, the coming of the Israelites to the land of Israel. All these details of ancient Israel is described. It further describes the Gentile attack of the Jewish people, in the time of Cyrus, Alexander the Great, and the Syrian conquest and domination, and the subsequent Maccabean, I don't know if you know about that revolt. It then concludes with the story of the referring back to the fallen angels and the opposites and their appearance in Jerusalem and their condemnation and the conversion of Gentiles with the happy ending of the resurrection of the righteous ones. Again, I'm only touching upon what this part is. There are many more details in this particular 4th book. Maybe some of you have read the book, and you can ask me about it. So now let me go to the last part. The last part of the book of Enoch is called the Animal Apocalypse, or the Epistle of Enoch. It describes the final judgment, referring back to the similitudes. It's especially a severe criticism of the wealthy people and the landlords and the people who have power and oppress them. I have never read any place in the Bible that so strongly hates rich and wealthy people and landlords, calls them by. It repeats it and it says hell is created, particularly for those people. That may tell you why he may have been a poor man. We don't know. So if you want to get a better description of hell, you go back to the Book of Enoch. I'm not going to describe it more. I don't want to frighten you because some of you might end up there. Or I hope not. But in any case, it starts by an allegorical description, an account of the children of Israel, using the animals, particularly, very interesting, to represent humans, and humans to represent angels. It is a very interesting book in terms of, I've never seen a work that describes human beings in terms of animals. Adam is represented as a bull, Eve as a cow, Abel is a heifer, Cain is a calf also. Noah is represented as a bull. Shem is another white bull. You know these names, so I'm not going to explain who they are. Japheth, Ham is a red bull. Japheth is a black bull, which is very interesting because usually people believe that black people descend from Ham, but Ham appears as a red man here, and anyway. And he calls God shepherd, the shepherd of the sheep. Azazel, about whom I spoke before, the fallen angel, and the giants are represented as elephants. Some of them as fallen angels and camels. The Israelites are represented as sheep. Ishmael and the Midianites are represented as donkeys. Esau and his descendants, Edom and Amalek, also wild boars. I don't want to bore you, but so all the names of the people in the Bible appear here in terms of like lions, especially the Babylonians and the Assyrians. The whole kingdoms were represented as lions. The dream vision also contains an outline of the history of the imprisonment of the head of the fallen angels, as earlier described in the book of. This section, the last section, also describes how the beasts of the field, the lions, leopards, dogs, hyenas, foxes, pigs, cows, crows, vultures, ravens, and the multiplied, represent different types of people and different types of sins they commit. It captures Moses and Aaron and the parting of the Red Sea and the crossing of the Red Sea by the Israelites, the giving of the law, the entrance into the Holy Land, and the fight with the Ammonites and Moabites, about which you already know from your Bible. But it gives it in detail, in very, very interesting, exciting detail. King Saul is described as a ram, ram. But this ram forsook the sheep and trampled upon them. That is him. You all know what happened to him. Then King David, described as another ram, was appointed to replace him. And he is described as a builder of the new kingdom of Israel, succeeded by Solomon. So some of this book of Enoch details certainly overlap with biblical stories that you know about. Let me quote one passage again from one of my translations. And that house became great and broad, that is the temple, and it was built for the sheep, that is for the children of Israel. Sheep, you see, as I said, people are called animals. A tower, lofty and great, was built on the house of the Lord of the sheep. That house was low, but the tower was elevated and lofty, and the Lord of the sheep stood on the tower, and they offered a full table before him. So, this again allegorically represents different people, different periods. The ravens are feeding the prophet Isaiah, and it describes the breakup of the kingdom of the north and the south of Israel to the Syrians and Judah by Babylonians, again in very graphic fashion. How God gave them, because of their sin, into the hands of lions and tigers, of wolves and hyenas. And the lions and the tigers, I quote this, eat and devour the greater part of these sheep, the Israelites. And the wild boars eat along with them. And they burned the tower and demolished that house. This is the destruction of the temple by the Assyrians. Subsequently, these chapters also describe the hopeful rebuilding of the temple in the time of Ezra and Nehemiah. And he says, forthwith I saw the shepherds pastured for 12 hours, and behold, 3 of the sheep turned back, Ezra and Nehemiah and another one, and came and entered and began to build up that fallen building of the Lord. I want to give you a chance to ask me a question. So let me just pass over some of what I'm trying to say. In one place, he says, as I saw in my vision how the Seleucids, that is the Greek conquerors of Israel, flew upon the faithful sheep, Israelites, the lambs, dashed the sheep in pieces and devoured them. I saw till horns grew upon those lambs and cast down their horns. I saw till there sprouted a great horn of one of those faithful, and their eyes were opened. Now, he's referring here to actually the Maccabeans. And the Maccabean story is also, again, I'm glad to say, reserved in the book of Maccabees, which is found in classical Ethiopic, but it happens to be found also in Greek and Latin. However, it's not found in Hebrew. When Jews celebrate Hanukkah, they don't really know what the story is about, except by orally. But because the books of Maccabeans 1 and 2 have been preserved only in Greek, Latin, and Ethiopian languages. Some scholars believe that this part also refers to the high priest, Onias, when the temple was destroyed. And Judas Maccabees came into power as a great horn among 6 others, is his brothers, of the heads of the lamb. And he says, and I saw till a great sword was given to the sheep, that is Judas Maccabees. Now we're talking about the end of the war. And the sheep proceeded against all the beasts of the field to slay them. And all the beasts and the birds of the heaven fled before their face. And all that had been destroyed and dispersed, and all the beasts of the field, the birds of heaven, assembled in that house, the Lord of the sheep, rejoiced with great joy, because they were all good and returned the house. Now, some scholars believe that the end of this section of the book of Enoch probably refers again to the Messiah again, who is described as a white bull, whom all the beasts of the field and the birds of the sky fear and plead with. Some also think that the part of this section refers to the battle of the Armageddon, where all the nations of the world wage war against the children of Israel. And this similar passage is found in Qumran, which gives me a chance to refer to the fact that the existence of the Book of Enoch was attested after the discovery of the scrolls in Qumran, where passages of the Book of Enoch were found. Now, running forward, in conclusion, the Epistle of Enoch is called the Apocalypse of the Weeks. It's dated by some as 2nd century BCE. The first part represents the past and the following three futures, the new heaven and the final judgment. During the seventh part of the 10 weeks, a new heaven shall appear. There will be many weeks without number forever, and all shall be in goodness and righteousness. This is a quotation. And then it kind of refers back to the fact that Enoch, the son of Methuselah, was righteous and his ascension. The second back of this end of the book describes the wisdom of God, the two paths of righteousness and evil, the final reward of the just and the righteous, and the punishment of the evil. The whole world witnesses the sinners and describes their end after death. The main sinners are chiefly the wealthy people, who are described as evil again, oppressing the just people, the righteous people. And the punishment of these rich people is highly emphasized. To haste forward and to conclude, the book ends with the description of the birth of Noah, an angelic figure. It describes the deluge and concludes with an early reference to the generation of the light, in contrast to the sinners. The Book of Enoch is an important part of the Ethiopian Orthodox Church canon and part of its central theology. There are also, in addition to now, I myself translated my book from a 14th, 15th century manuscript that was found in Lake Tana, the oldest we know of these manuscripts, and microfilm by German scholars from Hamburg, and I used that as the basis of my translation. There are other people who have translated Enoch based on later manuscripts, like the 18th century, and manuscripts get corrupted over the centuries. So I'm very proud to say that I stuck to one particular earliest manuscript. Let me say the book is so important that in addition to the preservation of this book, whose copies are now about almost 100 all over the world, almost 100 copies have been found in the British Library, in the Vatican, in Paris, in Germany, and some in microfilm form in the United States. So we've now reached almost 100 copies of these manuscripts throughout the world, but there will be many more because it is so central in the Ethiopian church, in the important book of the Ethiopian Canon and its theology. In addition to its importance, it also, just like other biblical books, have been interpreted into what we call the Andimta Turguame, which in Andimta Turguame means interpretation or commentary on Enoch. In conclusion, it's with great satisfaction that I note the global recognition among biblical scholars regarding the profound importance of the Book of Enoch. Its significance cannot be overstated in any scholarly examination. Any scholarly examination of early Christianity and early Judaism and the term concept of Islam cannot overlook the Book of Enoch. It's indispensable for our understanding of these religions. In conclusion, let me say, well, I want to give you a chance because I'm shortening my description, if that's okay. When you ask me, I can elaborate on that. Let me say, today we live in a world of crisis. Enoch, for me, is almost like a guide to the vision of what's happening in the world today. I hope the end of this crisis also probably will come soon, maybe with an appearance of a Messiah or not. I have no idea. But that is what fascinates me about Enoch. The exploration of the history of humanity. The examination of human folly. The great hope for salvation in spite of human fall. The hope for a new heaven and new earth. That is what Enoch represents. In concluding, let me say, I am very proud to be at this library. And let me say, I arrived at this library riding on a mule. Many, many years ago, I traveled for 4 days riding on a mule to go to a high school in Ethiopia. That's right, no cars. Ended up at Harvard, and ended up here at the Library of Congress, starting riding on a mule. But in any case, I apologize if I simply run through some of the important parts of the Book of Enoch. There is no time, because as you all know, time is short, but I am very pleased that there is a few minutes left. Did I take too much time talking? Okay. Thank you. And you can get a copy of this book from, it's called the Old Testament Pseudepigrapha, Volume 1, from Doubleday. And I'm planning to separate it because this contains a couple other translations. Okay, thank you. Is that okay? Oh, now you have a question.
No, I have my question already posed to you.
Yes, okay. Shall I answer that or?
No, I think we'll give a chance. Okay? You're welcome.
I assume, standing on one foot, what he's trying to say is, why is the book thrown out or forgotten by the rest of the world and preserved in Ethiopia? Is that right? Yeah. It is a very good question. It's a very important question, actually. Some scholars believe because of all the mysterious things in the Book of Enoch, the Book of Enoch talks about all these fallen angels. It talks about these people described in forms of animals. Some of maybe the early, although people like Tertullian considered the holy book, and Cyprian did too. Jerome had problems with it. Indeed, the major question is why this book, quoted once in the New Testament, referred to by many church fathers, got lost. Now, fragments of it is found in Greek, by the way, just about 4 or 5 chapters, and a few sentences in Latin, because we knew it existed before. And not only that, many church fathers refer to this book. So the big mystery is how come this book is lost to the rest of the world? I'm very proud to be an Ethiopian, to say that Ethiopia is a fascinating country. The alphabet was translated into Ethiopian almost before the Christian period. The alphabet came to Ethiopia. The Bible was translated into the Ethiopian language 400 or 500 before it was translated into English, German, Swedish, Norwegian. The only languages that compete with Ethiopic in terms of early biblical version, in fact, critical biblical studies always refer to that, Greek, Latin, Greek, Aramaic, of course. Aramaic is the first translation. Aramaic is the second. First, the Bible was translated to the Septuagint, then to Aramaic, then Syriac, or Peshitta, and Old Italian, really not Latin. Old Italian is different, a little different, Coptic, and Ethiopic. These 7 languages in any critical edition of the Bible are always referred to. Any university, Oxford or Cambridge or Harvard, any place where they teach biblical studies, the version of the Bible they use, edited in Germany, always refers to these 7 books. Because the Bible today has been translated almost over 2,000 languages. But it's one of the first 7 languages into it was translated. These ancient great people of Ethiopia, they were, in the book of Zariakov in the 14th century, say, which means all the people of Ethiopia are thirsty for knowledge. I'm very proud of that. And indeed, the Bible was translated into Ethiopian as one of the first 6 or 7 languages among 2,000 today. And throughout Ethiopian churches and monasteries, we find many, many manuscripts of ancient days. And the significance of Ethiopia was recognized by the people of Israel, the children of Israel, the Beit Israel, who also inhabited in Ethiopia and used the book. It's recognized by the Prophet Muhammad, who sent his disciples to Ethiopia as the land of righteousness, where they were preserved, where they were saved from the Quraysh, so to say. So Ethiopia is really a fascinating country. It's not because we are from Ethiopia, but it is a country that is a beautiful mountainous country, has the longest river in the world, the Blue Nile, which the Egyptian life depends on. And but in terms of scholarship, if I get that Oxford professor, I'll teach him ABCD, and I'll tell him that before the Bible was in his language of English, it existed in Ethiopia for 300-400 years. So the fact is that because of the mysterious conceptions in this book, and some of the early Christians thought this is heretical. Maybe also, you mentioned about the fact that Africa is a black country. and maybe this book appeals more to black people than, I don't know. But anyway, whatever. It takes me half an hour to answer your question. Okay, now let's give a chance to it.
Open the questions, and I'll give a chance to the professor to drink some water.
Thank you, Professor.
Oh,
I'm not a religious studies scholar, but one of the parts of the Bible that has always puzzled me is that Genesis reference to the sons of God marrying the beautiful daughters of man.
That's it. Yeah.
And I've always asked questions. I mean, what is that all about? And nobody has given me an answer that I found satisfactory. Also, I mean, listening to you, it's clear that there's so many references without citation to the Book of Enoch in the Bible. And there's a lot of silence around it, and for me, not really good explanations. You just have to believe with all these gaps. So I'm glad I came to listen to you because I can see a little bit. But what is, so what does the Book of Enoch specifically say about this? The angels were cast down, and then they came to earth, and then what?
This is an excellent question. In fact, many people have asked that question. In Genesis 5, verse 4 also, it refers to the fallen angels. And it doesn't say very much. What is that? Enoch described this in about 24 chapters. It lists even the name of these fallen angels, their size, their evil deeds, what they did to people, and how, in fact, they were the cause of the coming of the flood. So, my dear sister, I appreciate, by the way, thank you very much. I know you. So, these are a couple of colleagues there who've been trying to also study my history of African studies. So I appreciate that. And the Book of Enoch is the first place, in fact, we know that describes in major detail. You know, I was rushing through my explanation, but in this first 25 or 20, before chapter 41, 39 chapters, the description of the angels, their names, their deeds, their evil actions, and their destruction of humanity, and so on, is detailed, written, described in full. So please read my book of Enoch, and then now you know what Genesis is talking about. Even their names are given in Enoch.
Hello, Professor. Howard Marks here. I live here in the district. What a wonderful erudite presentation you gave us. I remember the Book of Enoch from reading in Bereshit in Genesis about Enoch, so it brought back some memories. The calendar. You mentioned in your presentation, Professor, the calendar. Of course, we're living with the Julian calendar and the Gregorian and the Hebrew calendar every day. But you put special emphasis on Wednesday. You mentioned Wednesday of having special emphasis. I mean, I think the Muslims, Friday's their Sabbath. For us, it's Shabbat, Saturday, Christians, Sunday. So tell us a little bit more about the significance of the calendar and also Wednesday.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate your question. I too, it's very puzzling why Wednesday was described in that fashion. Many of you know that in Genesis, there's 7 days of creation, and usually in the past, Monday and Thursday used to be, for some reason, days of fasting in Jewish tradition. Then Christians changed it to Wednesday and Friday. Why Wednesday plays that very role? There is still a question about it. Why it's described as the first day of creation? And I thank you very much for that question. We'll study it more. Okay.
Importance of the Book of Enoch in Ethiopia and in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. I wonder if you could tell us something about its use in liturgy and also in teaching the faithful.
Yes, the Book of Enoch is, of course, used in the church. It's quoted, and if not necessarily as part of liturgy, but in the discussion of religion and theology in the Ethiopian church, Enoch, we call him Enoch in Ethiopian, is very central. And the Book of Enoch, in fact, some priests I met said it was written before Genesis, because Enoch lived before Moses. Well, that's some kind of... So the significance of this book in the Ethiopian church cannot be underestimated. And that is why not only do we have the Giz version, there is one copy of it, I think we put it on the wall. Yeah, the Giz copy I put on the wall. It's not only the book itself, but its translation. And in sermons, Enoch is quoted in the churches, and there is a commentary on Enoch, many commentaries in Enoch. And as I told you, by now, although not a single copy of the manuscript of Enoch is found in Europe, in Greece, Italy, over 100 copies have been found and brought to the West. But there are many more copies. And there's no question about the significance of the Book of Enoch in the Ethiopian Orthodox Church. I don't know if I answered your question, but I'm trying.
Hi, I have a question about how the Book of Enoch relates to Qumran and the society there. Obviously, the Son of Man is very central, and I instantly think of like the pierced Messiah text. How central was the Book of Enoch to the people that were living there, and what evidence do we have from the Sea Scrolls of a relationship there?
In the Dead Sea Scrolls, you mean?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Thank you. That's a good question. Indeed, scholars today believe that the people who lived in Qumran, where we found the Dead Sea Scrolls, had the Book of Enoch. And that is why they found fragments of it in Qumran. But not enough to say that it replaces the Ethiopic. Ethiopic is still the only language in which the complete book is found. But the fragments of the Book of Enoch, like chapter 4, chapter 10, and so on, sometimes a sentence here, a sentence there, and it's quoted in the New Testament by the Book of Jude. So it was important for the people of the Qumran, not only as a text, but even many of the ideas in the war scrolls, many of the ideas in the other works of the Dead Sea Scroll refer to Enoch, quoting Enoch, or at least describe some of the same ideas. And it is because they had the Book of Enoch, some fragments of it survived in the Dead Sea Scrolls. Unfortunately, they will not replace the Ethiopic. At one time, many people thought, oh, we have 25% of the Book of Enoch from Qumran. No way. You know, you can always fill gaps and make it 25%, but no 25% of the Book of Enoch is found. But its existence there in fragments attests to the fact that the people of Qumran, even their ideas of the last days, the heavenly judgments and so on, are based in the Enoch.
Thank you. Actually, I'm quoting from your one of your books, the Ethiopian Orthodox Bible, where you mention about the Book of Enoch. For Ethiopic literature, the Book of Enoch is like Pushkin for Russian literature.
Like what?
Pushkin
Oh.
for Russian literature and Shakespeare for English literature. The teachings and literary ideas of the book have left an indelible physiognomic poems and hymns, especially Zenas, girls, acts or great deeds, and Malk's physiognomic poems and hymns, especially girls and on other Ethiopian literary traditions and cultural expressions, metaphors, and language as a whole. In other words, Enoch is par excellence the basic source of Ethiopian literary idioms.
Is this from my book?
Yes. Actually, you even finish it by the Jews who came to Ethiopia must be among those who held Enoch as precious religious and spiritual work, and the Ethiopians inherited the legacy.
If that,
That's why I just want.
if that's what I said it. Then I'm not.
The Ethiopian Orthodox Church.
Well, let me say, my brother, thank you very much. Of course, what I'm saying about Pushkin is the founder of Russian literature. Enoch has also become a basis of a good deal of Ethiopian literature. Later, Gadels and the others. Yeah. I actually gave a talk in this library about that book, about the Ethiopian church. Am I right? I think it's on the website. I've seen it. Yeah. If it's that one. So I'm glad you quoted it for me. What can I say? You already said what I said.
Okay. So I just know Enoch is from before the flood. So it was oral tradition that went down to his grandson that then, with Noah, then continued the oral tradition of all of this writing that finally got codified when? When was it finally? I know that the first 5 books of the Bible were written by Moses. So who wrote Enoch? Is that attributed to Moses as well? Or who was the one that finally inscribed the oral traditions that survived the flood?
Okay. Yeah. Thank you very much. Yeah. Yes. But Enoch is, of course, supposed to be written by Enoch himself. He saw the visions. And, you know, a lot of scholarly debates arise when we talk about who wrote Genesis, who wrote Exodus, who wrote the book of Enoch. So the important thing is some of the visionaries of ancient times were aware of what books are very important. And over the time, some of these books were canonized. I don't know if you know, the Jewish books of the Old Testament, the Hebrew Bible, the 39 books, 24 in Hebrew, were canonized at the Council of Jamnia in the year 90. Canonized means that a group of religious leaders and scholars got together and looked at these books, whether they're inspirational, whether inspired by the divine. And so they selected those books. And that is why in the Hebrew Bible, we have these 24 books. And there was a debate 2,000 years ago why, for instance, the book of Song of Songs should be a holy book. In fact, one of the rabbis said it's the holy of holiest because it talks about the love of God and humanity. That's how it got into the canon of Jamnia. And likewise, in the New Testament canon, it's a little bit vociferous at different times. At the Council of Nicaea, they had these 27 books. But it was at the Council of Laodicea where it was finally decided on these 27 books. So why should books like Enoch and Jubilees did not get counted in the Hebrew Bible or in the New Testament? That's a big question scholars raise, but one of the answers people gave is, you know, they say in Hebrew, mitomea daim, some of these writings defile your hand. And Enoch, with all its description of the fallen angels, the mysteries, the last days, they thought people should not deal. In fact, in ancient times, among some Jewish communities, you're not supposed to read the Bible until you're 40 years old. And in the Catholic Church, too, it was a problem. So the mysteries of what these books contain and how some of them became canonized and how some of them got left out is still a scholarly question, debate. They say a debate. I don't know if I'm answering your question. What was there was a specific question that.
Specific question was when was it, because it came down to oral tradition. At what point in history was it codified? Was it written down?
Enoch, you mean?
Enoch.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Of course, when we speak about oral tradition, they believe that even a lot of the biblical works originally were oral. Eventually, the 5 books of Moses were written down much earlier, and some of the others much later. Enoch, too, was at one time probably oral, but it must have been written down about the 2nd or 3rd century of the pre-Christian period, because a lot of the parts of the book of Enoch are dated to the 3rd century BC, 2nd century BC. There was a debate about the similitudes, the second part that describes the Son of Man. Some people tried to put it together later because the Gospels mention the Son of Man, but that has been disputed and discredited. So even that one, maybe that's a later part, 1st century BC. But much of the description of like the Maccabean War, it ends up with like the description of the Maccabean War. That is pre-Christian. The Ethiopic manuscripts that we have today, the oldest one I have now is the 14th century manuscript, which I used. There must be some more. Many more ancient books are being discovered in Ethiopia. Ethiopia is a repository of many holy books. It's really a great country where the priests study these books, the monks in the monasteries, they spend their time copying these manuscripts, and they're now, for instance, over 100,000 copies of Ethiopic manuscripts we have here and in Europe, and there are probably many more. And the book of Enoch, as to when it was no different from the other part of the Bible that were originally oral and then got recorded down. And the Enoch is believed to have been recorded down in the 3rd century or 2nd century before the Christian period. And that's why we have fragments of it in Qumran, which is early pre-Christian. Yes, sir. Did you raise a question? Somebody?
So, good afternoon and good evening, everybody. It's a great honor to be here at the Library of Congress at your lecture, Professor Isaac. We always meet in New Jersey. And so I teach in African Studies, and I'm based now at the Kluge Center.
Which center? At
the Kluge Center, right here at the Library of Congress. Uh-huh. But this is really one of the highest honor to be a scholar of African studies and an African in the US at this moment, to try to attend your lecture where you evoke and explain to us the heritage that brings Jewish, Christian, Muslims from an African traditions and the history of writing, the classics. This is one of the greatest gifts that you have given us and you continue to give us.
Thank you.
So through this beautiful introduction of you that we got, how your work helped us actually think of how to build a culture of peace across nations, across communities, by looking at the ways in which these deep traditions can teach us something. So I'm forever grateful to you. Thank you so much.
I'm
grateful to the Library of Congress.
I'm most grateful to you. I'm most grateful to you for your kind comments. I appreciate very much. In fact, let me say that quite often Africa is overlooked, not only Ethiopia. There are some inscriptions all over. Let me put it this way. The Bible and some of the early church fathers were Africans. You cannot deny it. Where was Augustine? He was a Copt. Where is Tertullian? He's a North African. Where was Augustine born? His mother, Monica, she's an African. Practically some of the most important early founders of Christianity were Africans. As a footnote, in my last lecture, I spoke about the book of Acts, chapter 8, that talks about the Ethiopian eunuch. An Ethiopian eunuch. He came to Jerusalem to worship, which means even before Christianity, some of these African people were interested in the idea of the one God or whatever, and he is believed to have brought Christianity to Ethiopia, and Ethiopia became one of the first countries in the world. Before Sweden became Christian, before Norway became Christian, before Germany became Christian. And then there's no denying that really some of the central pillars of the Christian religion were Africans. Augustine, Cyril, Origen, Tertullian, Cyprian, Augustine himself. Some of the early theological writers were in North Africa, in Egypt, and then Ethiopia also is one of the countries that already in the 4th century was translating the Bible. Apropos that, let me say, I also brought with me the alphabet table. Where's the alphabet table? Oh, maybe if you read, I'll show them a copy of it. I'm very proud to say that Ethiopia is the first country to adopt the alphabet. Now, what is the alphabet? Do many of you know what the difference between alphabet and general writing is? Shall I explain it, or it's outside of?
Another time, because there are questions related.
Okay. Well, because the alphabet is a major invention, an important invention, and the Ethiopians were among the first people to use the alphabet, already in pre-Christian time. Okay. Yeah.
I mean, you can talk more about the alphabet if you'd like.
What did you say?
Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask a question about when you mentioned the use of animals in analogy to men in the fifth part of the Book of Enoch. I was wondering if you could speak more about that, particularly because the comparison between man and animal throughout the Old Testament is quite numerous, and it's often used in arguments, like in the book of Job or in Genesis. And so I was, what argument is made by speaking of the animals in the book of Enoch?
What is the question? What is the question specifically?
What could you say more about the comparison between animals and man in the book of Enoch?
In the book of Enoch?
Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of study about that. If you want to look at my own commentary on this, and there are people like James Charlesworth and others have written why animals were used to symbolize people. It's a very fascinating concept. Of course, it's a long discussion, and maybe I can refer you to the commentaries by Charlesworth. Even you can why these animals have ended up representing. It's a fascinating question, actually. I asked that question myself. People were represented as animals. But I guess he wanted to put across his idea of the nature of people. Like the Babylonians are lions, meaning, they were a mighty king. And the Philistines were foxes, they're smaller animals. So anyway, it's a big question which maybe will take some more time to explain.
I think we will take one question because we don't have time.
Thank you very much. I hope maybe after my question he'll go on to talk more about the alphabet, because I'm very curious about that. So my question is kind of two in one. I wanted to know what the Book of Enoch says about the four rivers that are described in Genesis and their positions, and whether it corroborates or contradicts the Pangea theory and the division of tectonic plates that we have today in stories about the world. And then the other one is seeing how comprehensive the Ethiopic Book of Enoch, the text from Ethiopia, is about prophecy. From Enochian times all the way to the end of days. I'm wondering how prophetic or comprehensive it is in its prophetic scope about, predicting the loss of the same text or the disappearance of Enoch from the annals, and who, if it has any clues about who may have hidden it and the agenda to let the Enochian text disappear. So two very different questions.
Are you asking me about the prophetic books, about the prophecy of Enoch?
I kind of want to understand whether or not the Book of Enoch speaks prophetically about its own disappearance from the literature. Because it is so prophetic in the ways that you've described it, from when it was written, from the beginning of the world.
You mean the book or Enoch?
All the books, the book itself, yes. The books of Enoch, whether the book of the parables, I mean, you gave us 4 books. I'm trying to remember all of them. Yes, all the books, from the parables, the one about the Son of Man, the deluge. The calendar. Yes, and the calendar. what does the book of Enoch prophesy its own disappearance from the holy texts, and then also what does it say in terms of whether or not it corroborates the kind of scientific evidence we have today for Pangea, a globe that eventually separated into continents.
Okay, I'm going to intervene. Because we're out of time, we have to vacate by 8, and you have a display of things that you want to see. Some of you who haven't had a chance. We have to stop here, and my good lady, I think you can address that question.
You can come to me, and I'll talk to you. You can
in the mix. And I thank you all for coming. This is the end of it.
I thank you.